But first, let's bring in Pennsylvania Congressman Dan Meuser, who is on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and Texas Congressman Pat Fallon, who is on the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having us. Very much.
All right, Congressman Meuser, I'm going to start with you. Biden's going to this summit without essentially any wins right now. He's really down not only in poll numbers, but like I said, with his own party and his climate agenda, something that I mentioned he really wanted to tout this week and talk about the success and what we were going to be doing. It has taken a back seat. Since he hasn't been able to move the needle on his Build Back Better agenda, how is that going to impact his approach to the world stage and what he might be able to do?
Well, I don't know how much it would affect. We always have to be looking after U.S. interests. Certainly the debacle, the circus that's taking place in the Democrat Party right now, things just aren't moving. You got the far left against the left, and we really don't have a seat at the table other than to point out to the American people and some moderate Democrats, if there are, if I could say that they shouldn't be voting for this. Perhaps we should be strongly considering a T&I bill. But everything really in this reconciliation, and I spell that with a W, by the way, because it will wreck the economy. And here they are trying to state that somehow this $1.75 trillion, which really is $4 trillion, all they did was exactly what we thought they were going to do, cut back the years, is somehow going to curb inflation. That's just completely nonsensical against every economic theory that exists. That's like defying the law of gravity. So he's not dealing from a position of strength, and we will probably get nothing done at all on the important issues that they should be discussing, like national security and trade.
Well, Congressman Fallon, apparently President Biden needs some help because his old boss, Barack Obama, is coming to his rescue. I don't know if he can rescue him, but he's reportedly planning to attend this big climate change conference in Glasgow, Scotland. CNN writes this: Obama aides and friends tell CNN that the former president wants to help Biden win back world faith and American leadership on the issue. Does that raise eyebrows? I mean, what message does this send to the rest of the world when the former president has to come to the current president's rescue? Well, we may have seen this before. I remember that Barack Obama news conference when President Clinton came to his rescue, but this is going global. This is a whole other level of that.
Well, John, it's great that you point that out, because who's actually in charge? Who's running the White House? Is it Barack Obama? Is it Joe Biden? Is it Kamala Harris? Or is it Joe Biden? He's the elected president of the United States right now. And as my colleague and friend Dan Meuser just said, they put the rec and reconciliation. They are in charge of all levers of government, and it's like Keystone Cops. They drop a 1,700-page bill on us yesterday, expect us to read it in a few hours and want to take a vote on it. And the only reason we didn't take a vote on it is because they didn't have enough Democratic votes. So on the world stage, he has looked weak internationally in cutting and running in Afghanistan. He's looked completely incompetent, and he has a dereliction of duty to the American people with a porous border, and he can't get anything done. And he has his party in charge of the White House and both chambers of Congress.
As we talk about foreign relations, Congressman Meuser, I want to talk to you about this because today President Biden addressed the United States' handling of this new defense pact with Australia while meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron today. Watch this.
You're asking me? The answer is, I think what happened was, to use an English phrase, what we did was clumsy. It was not done with a lot of grace. I was under the impression certain things had happened that hadn't happened.
So he goes on to say he was under the impression that things had happened and they hadn't. There seems to be a pattern with him, pushing the blame on someone else, this time his own team. Obviously, we know that France removed their ambassadors from the U.S. when this happened. What does his approach, lack of ownership, do to rebuilding trust between one of our strongest allies?
You know, Lindsay, it's terrible. The trust has certainly been eroded. To make a comment like that, everything they do is clumsy. I mean, let's face it. And after Afghanistan, after the unbelievable erosion of trust, where we didn't even make contact with our closest allies during that terrible crisis, that affected so many of the world and our allies. So it's not a good situation. We're not dealing from strength. We're not looking after America's interests. We're not working on things that are in the interest even of our allies, which is stronger economy, better trade, dealing with the China threat. And that's what our allies want to be talking about. Instead, we're doing underhanded things against one of our strongest allies, and that being France. Whether it was right or wrong, it was handled quite clumsily. So I agree with the president.
One more foreign policy topic we want to talk about with you guys, specifically you, Congressman Fallon, is Iran and the Iran nuclear deal. They say they're going to plan to return to these talks. President Trump pulled out of the deal in 2018. Of course, critics say it does not prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, and Iran is the largest state sponsor of terrorism. How does this affect our relationship with other countries in that region?
And again, I think it makes us look weak, quite frankly, John. I used to love President Reagan when he would say trust but verify when he was talking about the Soviets. So I have no problem with talking to Iran or even agreeing to a deal if it's truly a trust and verify, if it actually prevents them from getting nuclear weapons. The deal that Obama cut with them gave them a lot of money, and quite frankly, I think it made it easier for them and probably accelerated their nuclear program. So if you're going into talks, if it was President Trump and his team and Mike Pompeo going into talks, I would have, and I'm not saying that as a Republican, I'm saying that as an American and somebody that's being objective, I would have faith in that because they were going to demand accountability. And is Biden going to demand accountability? Because he's not doing it, he wasn't doing it with China, he's not doing it with Afghanistan, the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, he didn't do it with Russia, he's not doing it with Mexico or Central America. So he's got a track record of being incredibly weak. So that worries me.
Before we let you go, Congressman Meuser, I do want to ask you this. You brought up China, the issue of China. Obviously, these world leaders are going to be talking about climate change this week. China is a huge component of greenhouse emissions. They exceed the developed world. For the first time in 2019, they are going to be on Skype, remote, not in person, talking about operating from a place of strength. How does this affect the talks that China is not there in person to be able to negotiate with them?
China is the largest polluter in the world. It's well documented. They have 1,000 coal plants. They're building another 100. Clean coal can actually be utilized effectively as it is in Pennsylvania. But we're transitioning, of course, into natural gas. And that's why the United States is the only industrialized nation that has reduced our carbon emissions for the last 2 years in a row. And yet China and the U.S. are both in the Paris Accords, and with no accountability whatsoever. So once again, we have a very clumsy executive office that's clearly not respected by Xi Jinping. And I will say to my good friend Pat Fallon, I'll see you next week. And remember, Pennsylvania is going to be the next Texas.
Gentlemen, always appreciate your time. Thanks for being with us on this Friday evening.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, John. And thanks, Lindsay. God bless.